All right, hey, thanks for coming on and being a guest. I call it the Oddball Odyssey podcast. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm Alex Faciane. I've been on the internet now for a little over a decade. I did Super Beer Bros for a very long time. I'm still doing it today. You probably know me from Scary Game Squad, or I used to do the Decks a long time ago, a Pokemon show. I'm on the Chilluminati podcast today also, and I'm doing all kinds of stuff. I don't know. I'm a comedy joke 'em ups man on the internet line, and you can see me do videos all over the place.
Yeah, I think you guys joked on one of the episodes because I went through your guys' catalog, at least the main episodes, in a couple of months while I was at work. I'm somebody that found the podcast without knowing who you guys were beforehand. Um, so I thought that was funny because I fell in line with that. Um, so my first question is, you guys joke a lot and go through a lot like real life, stories and encounters. How much do you believe in like the cryptid stuff?
Like, I don't know. Like, it's very rare that there is something that comes across our desk, if you will,
Mhm.
that is so well supported by fact that it's impossible to say that it didn't happen, right? So, like, rarely am I like, this one's real, right? But like, I do believe I like to judge stories off my gut feeling about whether the person who is telling it believes that it's real. And I think that's to me what's interesting. So like, do I believe in cryptids? Like, I think it's possible that they're out there. I think that there has been some cases of people seeing things that are impossible to say exactly what they are, but I don't think there's been any convincing evidence of like Bigfoot or, a lot of the times a lot of them are sort of like disproven by some sort of discovery like the chupacabra. You find these like manged up like coyotes or whatever that people are like, oh, that's definitely what a chupacabra is. But like the question of whether it's real to me is more interesting, and the notion that there could be one out there is more interesting to me. And so I tend to focus more on, when you see my episodes, I was just talking to Mathis the other day about how he sometimes gets frustrated when he does an episode because people like take issue with the things he says, as if they're like
Mhm.
factually untrue or something like that. But it's like he's doing exactly what I'm doing, which is that we're sort of like portraying the story of what happened or what people think, or like, here is the deal with XYZ topic so that you know what we all know, right? It's not about necessarily us saying, you know, the first way that we can prove that aliens are real is this. So like I think there's a distinction to make there, but in terms of what I believe, I think it's like more that I'm willing to believe than it is that I see evidence all around me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because that's more or less kind of how I feel. I live in a realm of unless you can directly have evidence to disprove that anything's plausible or possible. Um, just because there's no evidence doesn't necessarily disprove it. It just doesn't prove it, in
Yeah,
my
exactly.
opinion.
Something's happening sometimes,
Hmm.
definitely. Like with the
Yeah,
drones, perfect example. The drones is a perfect example. It's like obviously something is happening in New Jersey. Something is occurring there. Like there is no doubt that there is something that people are seeing in the sky. Is it aliens? Is it UFOs? Or is it whatever the fuck Trump said it was? I have no idea. Like, but it's there's no question that it's like a real phenomenon that is being observed without
yeah,
me
that
making
one
a
sounds
judgment
like a
on what it
mixed
is.
bag of things.
Yeah, but just without making a judgment on what it is, I like to
Hmm.
say that's clearly something that's occurring that people are seeing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like talking about evidence, the what was it, the Gimli and Patterson film is a big one that people still debate about whether or not it's a suit or living entity.
Right.
For me, it does seem like it could be a real film. You could see some of the calf muscles move. There was one episode I listened to from the Cryptids of the Corn that says you can see like the thumb twitch. So having some kind of like animatronic built in to have the fingers move just seems like it would make it too expensive for the time. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, looking at that thing, because people always say me that. I think because people always say that I kind of look like Bigfoot or something. I don't know why. I don't know why people particularly love to share
It could just
Bigfoot.
be the beards.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why people particularly love to share Bigfoot stuff with me. But when people ask me about that film, I'm like, look, I've looked at it like so many times. Like the truth is, it's like so far away. If you look at it, I think that the thing that people should do more, if they're listening to this show, is, and you're thinking about the Patterson Gimlin film, like watch it unstabilized. Like watch it the way that it actually looks at the speed that it's actually supposed to be run. And then you can understand why it's really hard to say whether or not you can see muscles moving or whatever. Because when I look at those stabilized things, I watch them a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. There was like a time on the show even where, like in minisodes or wherever, I don't remember where I was talking about it, but I kept going back to it and talking about it was real. I was seeing like ka-chunk, like body weight shift. I was seeing the calf muscles. I saw the hand thing, and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm like hallucinating this now because it's so blurry. Like, and when you look at it for real, when you look at it how it actually was captured, it makes you doubt whether you're even seeing the things that you're seeing. So on that specific one, again, like, is it possible that that's a film of Bigfoot? Hell yeah. Is it way awesome if it is? Like, that's a way tighter story. I love the idea that somebody did that. Or, the one that was going around TikTok, it's like a early furry outfit, like very into that idea too, as an explanation to this mystery.
Hmm.
But whatever it is, I think it is a real piece of footage. Like, I don't think it's edited. I think it's a proper thing that was filmed in the woods.
Yeah. Sure, I lost my train of thought. Oh, yeah. One thing that people always use to discredit is it's like, oh, well, they went out making a Bigfoot film and they saw Bigfoot. It has to be fake. I'm like, no, if you're going out to look for Bigfoot, you would hope to find some evidence.
Yeah, exactly.
And I forget the group, but they were on. Have you heard of the confessionals with Tony Muckle?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
He they were on, and that's what they try to do is disprove, how can you hoax these things? And they talk about how hard it is. They got a really big dude, and it's hard to carry that much weight going like uphill and stuff.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, like it's like, how do I say this? Like movie magic, right? Like there's a lot of ways that we could have achieved the outcome of seeing that thing, like that we saw, like because it wasn't very clear. We don't really know what we're really looking at. That's why it's such a problem. That's why it's such a thing that people keep talking about is because it's really unclear what it is. So, like, is it tough? Would it be tough for somebody to do it? Yeah, definitely. Like looking at it like in that way. But like, does that rule out the possibility that it could have been a person who just like worked really hard or like was kind of actually that like buff enough to do it? Like, no, you know what I mean? So, who really knows?
Yeah. I would love to see a Bigfoot. I'm in Arizona, and we do have some stories up north, about like Snowflake, where what's his face got abducted, Travis. I'm spacing on his last name. I'd love to save up and try and do a trip out there and see what I can find. Um, have you had any plans to try and go looking, Bigfoot hunting?
Like actually go out just for the express purpose of looking for Bigfoot? No, I've never thought to do that. But like whenever we talk about things that we want to do on the show, like going out and doing investigations is one of the things that would be very funny. I think just to like genuinely go out with equipment that we think would actually be useful and actually try our best to find things like Bigfoot or ghost evidence or things like that, things that you can go out and investigate, or like a place that's supposed to be demonic, monitor the surroundings and see if there's any sort of paranormal whatever. And yeah, I think if we did do that, Bigfoot would be on the list. But until we get like a nice budget for something like big and production heavy like that, it's just kind of more imaginary at this point.
Yeah, I'm planning to do it more very amateur style. Just go up and camping with a buddy and have a camera. Just do some calls and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
It's a worthwhile way of getting an answer to a question,
definitely.
especially one most people just decide for themselves whether it's true or false anyway. So
Yeah,
at least you went and tried and did something, you know?
yeah. I've been kind of ridiculed a little bit by my family believing in like UFOs and aliens and whatnot most of my life.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's kind of part of the that's kind of part of the plan with all this stuff is like it's hard to talk about it because there's so much stuff out there that you can equate it with that's so silly or crazy or grifty or whatever, but you know, it's not really a crime to be genuinely curious about something. And as long as you go into it keeping an open mind and you're, trying to get to a conclusion that is supported by the evidence rather than finding evidence to support your conclusions, I think there's nothing wrong with investigating the world around you with any sort of hypothesis. I think that's good. I think that's just the only way you ever are going to get it. Like the person who finally finds a Bigfoot is going to be some dude who goes out with his buddy with a fucking camera and finds it and accidentally they cut off his hand or some shit like that. Like just once it's going to happen. And it's not going to be like some millionaires going out there to make Skinwalker Ranch season 15 or whatever. It's going to be some person who's out there doing something crazy. And finally, if there is a Bigfoot out there, that's going to be the kind of thing that probably works. And then what? And then it's all been worth it because that's exactly what happened. Even if it's not you who did it, everybody going out and doing that type of investigating, that's the only way you're going to get, uh, you know, closure on those types of things, you know?
Yeah, that's why some people in the podcast spiel that I listen to, they say they don't give out locations because they don't want other people to get endangered or kind of like push them away. Or if they get too many people out there, then you can't really catch anything because it's too much noise.
Right. Yeah, like that makes sense. Like if you look at how even just like wildlife conservationists work with rare species and people who film rare thing like for like David Attenborough type stuff,
Mhm.
like the places where they go to get those killer shots are like widely, you know, there's a big level of secrecy around because like they're rare creatures that people never see. If you come and you're a hunter, and suddenly where that shot is was shot at, you can come find like some of the rarest pelts or whatever. So it's kind of interesting that that's the same kind of situation with just regular zoology and cryptozoology. You know,
Yeah, you
it's a
got
sim-
to protect them at all costs either way. I think it was a Cryptids of the Corn that brought up if Bigfoot was real, um, that would probably dampen like a lot of the logging industry because now you're talking about like conservation areas, protected species, laws and all that stuff. So
well,
it's
it
better just
depends.
to pretend they don't.
It depends. Like, who knows? Like, if they're a civilization, right? I think it would be hard to have rich people ignore them. But if they're more of a wildlife type scenario, I don't know. Like, I could see rich people just sort of moving them to a Bigfoot sanctuary and continuing on with their logging. I don't know. Yeah, I think that type of thing comes down to that. Like, there was in my hometown, I remember there was a bridge that was like across the like harbor. So like from one side of the harbor to the other, it like saves you like a 30-minute trip around on the freeway. So great bridge, it's been there for many years, and then suddenly they had to change all the lights on it from white to blue because they noticed one day that the color of the lights was interrupting the migrations of these like birds that were like coming through that area, and they were like coming there and like dying and losing their way and getting messed up. And so they uh, they were like, well, we're not going to get rid of the bridge. So they just went in and like did what they needed to do with money to like make it so that they could have the bridge exist and also the wildlife. So, like I say, it depends on what the deal is with Bigfoot. Like some people say Bigfoot, come from another dimension and they can like resonate with you through a crystal, and they come out and they smoke ganja and they can play guitar, and if you hang out with them and you spin around 3 times, they'll come play PlayStation 5 with you in your house or whatever. But I've never met one. I don't think that we have any direct evidence of their culture yet, but I think that's part of it. I think like that will influence that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Bigfoot like entities, I think it's not all just one thing. It could be a bunch of different things. Um, what is it like the list of alien species we allege that the government had contact with? I think it lists like a Chewbacca-like one, so it could be some aliens they're seeing. I think possibly they could just be a big ape, like species that is closely related to us, or may not be. I have heard people talk about like the Fae. They could just mimic Bigfoot just to mess with people, or like the Nephilim theory gets tossed around too. They're part human, part angel, part possibly again still part ape, but it's like a mixture of things, which would explain some of the woo stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of like conjecture about a mythological creature at this point, right? Like
Hmm.
we can study it as a cultural sort of like movement, right? Like I don't know, you can look back thousands of years to the tribes of the New World, right? Like Native American tribes and stuff like that, and you can see that they have stories that talk about creatures that sound like Bigfoot, right? And you can look at today, and you can see the Bigfoot that you get on like the one that like they mess with in the woods in the commercials.
Oh yeah,
you know
this was it beef jerky?
yeah, he kind of like that Bigfoot to me kind of looks like, in the same way that Coca-Cola invented Santa Claus, like there's sort of a look of Bigfoot that's like the pop art Bigfoot also. That's another way that he's been involved. So he's studyable that way, and you can study the stories that people tell about Bigfoot, right? Or Big Feet, or whatever you want to call them, the various Yeti type ape men shaped creatures that are out there. Like you can study them in that way. You can study them as lore. You can study them as arcane knowledge, but you can't really do the bio. That's, I mean, I guess that's what makes them cryptids, is you can't really do the biology thing yet. We can't really say anything definitive about them, right? Like
Hmm.
there's not. I don't know that there's an expert, because there's not really been any certain evidence.
That's something else I've heard people bring up about the DNA. Is that if they are part of the family tree, some of the DNA just gets kicked out because if it has too much human, it's considered like cross-contamination. So I think how many got kicked out that weren't supposed to, but it came up too human for the computer's liking.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a million ways. There's a million ways it could go, but until we dart one, take it in
Hmm.
and have a chat with it, who knows?
Definitely. Moving on to, because I had like a list of cryptids I want to ask you about. How you feel about like Dogman and like the werewolf types
Like
people see?
again, like if you look at it again, like I was talking about, like as a cultural thing, right? There's all kinds of different accounts, like you were saying about the Bigfoot. Like some people talk about aliens, some people talk about whatever. Some people talk about lycanthropy as a virus. Some people talk about it as like some sort of mutation. There's definitely, we know there's weird like medical sort of like oddities that occur sometimes, like the fucking furry boy that has fur all over his body. There's giant people. There's evidence of giant people that were, towered above other people and were maybe like a little bit more misshapen with like genetic things that we don't have anymore. I don't know. I don't know what that is. There's enough culturally around to see different ways that people could have gotten to werewolf or beast man or dog person or whatever. And you can look at it that way culturally, right? But in terms of real stuff, like, yeah, I think the only thing that we can look to if we want to be skeptical is these biological things, the dog face boy type, you know, maladies or whatever, disorders or whatever you want to call them. and say, okay, well, probably people saw this and like freaked out and told an entire story, or whatever, and then you can say that's the end of it. But personally, I'm more comfortable with saying, you know, if there's a thing where like humans are able to transform into beasts and they like do it together and they spread it to each other like they do in like a D&D type werewolf situation or like Vampire the Masquerade type situation, like if that really exists, I might you might there might actually be a cover up. Like they might actually have organization to, you know, suppress their presence in media or whatever. But again, I'm just like literally writing stories at this point. I'm literally writing like werewolf tales. I'm just inventing cool stories that involve werewolves. Like we just have to find one. Again, we have to find what somebody has to get attacked at moonlight and then shoot a man through the chest that's a wolf and take a picture of it and then watch him shrink down like Bruce Banner into his shorts
Yeah, because there's
only.
definitely legends like that. Another podcast I listen to is the Cryptid Huntress. That was one she brought up. Like the lady was walking home, shot this beast that popped out at her, and then she found her daughter later with like a wound on her hand, and it could be circumstantial, but the belief was maybe she was the werewolf. Some of the other podcasts I listen to say that the difference between dogmen and werewolves is that the dogmen seem to be more like the biological nature. Whereas werewolves, it has to have some kind of like magic aspect to it to turn into.
Right.
So that's more like the occult side to it, whereas dogmen seem to be biological. And then
Yeah, I
you can
mean it's
speculate from
very
there
weighty.
as
Yeah.
how they came to be. I know some people bring up hybrid experiments with the government and whatnot, because you see them a lot around like cemeteries or like military bases. So people connect the dots saying, what if they're like god dogs
Right.
and
Like
that
some Resident Evil type shit.
yeah, and that maybe some have escaped, and just never came back, and that's why you have like the really hyper aggressive ones, like in the Land of the Lake type stories.
Well, yeah, like a Cujo-esque. But that's the thing, right? Like, if half the story is, okay, well, first of all, if you believe magic is real, then we think werewolves are probably more magic, and we think these dogmen are more biological. It's like, yeah, I mean, like, great. Like, that's another cool way it could be. Like, makes sense. I see the logic of it. I see the like idea of like, oh, the dog face boy could be like a dog man, or maybe like certain family lines have that genetic trait where they grow hair everywhere and they just sort of like keep to themselves in some cultures because it's weird. Like if you've done that for like six generations, maybe it goes back to the 17 or 1800s, and it's always just been weird, and so you just keep to yourself, and it creates like a Boo Radley scenario. I don't know. There's many ways it could go, but again, like until there's some sort of substantiated version of it, we're just doing lore videos about Dark Souls.
Yeah, I always just find it like super interesting to listen to people speculate and whatnot. Like I said before, I've always been somebody who believed they could be out there. There's definitely enough like historical events to make you question whether or not they could be.
I just like reading like accounts of stuff
Hmm.
like that from a long time ago when you can't really tell whether they're being real or fake or whatever. And you like to imagine like, is this person just like trying to describe the world around them with words that, you know, like maybe they didn't have enough understanding of science to comprehend what creature they were looking at. Maybe they think it's a wolf man, but really what they're looking at is like some kind of, I don't know, like a big tiger or a lion, and they don't understand that the lion is, I don't know. Like there's a lot of different ways it could go, and you can just tell somebody something and say, "Look, from the far east, a man who had sex with a wolf at midnight, and now it's this thing," and they would just bring out some crazy dog from the mountains that nobody's ever seen before, and then it has kind of a scary look, and then people are going home telling their family like, "You'll never believe this. I saw like a dog man. I saw like a crazy beast at the fair or whatever." And it's like, well, we just didn't have a way of describing it, so that's what it was. It's like the sea monsters thing. when people just saw like a squid and they were like, it's a monster. Who knows? But now we just know they're squid.
Yeah, was it? I think might have been you guys that was talking about something like that, where the guy was like, "Oh, it kept escaping," and then he created this rig to like breathe fire and like shake, make it seem like there was a creature inside.
Inside of like a
It was like a
cage.
carnival. Yeah, it was like a carnival thing. He would travel around. Maybe I'm confusing you guys.
I don't know that specific story, but I have heard of tons of things like that that sound,
Yeah, he
like
was like,
that
"Oh,
sounds
I
very
caught this
believable.
beast," but every time the show started, he was like, "Oh, he escaped. We have to go find it." Until he rigged up like a cage to shake and like breathe fire to make it seem like something was in there. And then yeah, definitely the stories of the cynocephali too, of like human-looking people with just dog heads. They're talked about in the Bible and in like some Hindu mythology. So I think the world is definitely a real place, whether it's all magic or just stuff we don't understand. Definitely, it's weird.
Yeah, I mean the notion of talking about stuff that we don't understand, right? It's a by nature it's a constantly evolving topic because once you talk about it, you start to understand it, right? So it's always going to be shifting the things that we don't understand from, I mean, imagine not knowing what dinosaurs are, right?
Hmm.
And just seeing like lizards and shit around you that you know about. Like if you're like some guy from like, I don't know, whatever year, 1725 in whatever country, and you're looking around and you suddenly dig up like the something you can't believe. It seems like one of those tiny lizards that crawls in your house, except 1 million times larger, and you're like, what the fuck did I just find? This is a fucking skull that I could sleep inside of. What is this? They were monsters. There were monsters here. And now we just know, oh, okay, well, like back in the day, there were these like bird things that were like giant bird, big bird creatures called dinosaurs. So we call them werewolves now. We call them vampires. Another thing that I think is like eventually we're going to understand that vampires were several different things that we now know about in a mundane way.
Hmm.
I think that's really the kind of like the truth of any strangeness, right? Like some of that stuff is fun because it's aesthetic, right? Like obviously when we have Chilluminati podcast, we do branding and the branding has like cool monster or like sick, like spooky vibes. But like, the truth is everything that's ever been described by science at one point in time we thought was magic. Like if I told you and you're a Viking, and I told you, hey, your king, Bluetooth, one day he's gonna be like the way that I like play music from my fucking hands into like speakers that 400 people can listen to in a big room, and it's gonna be wireless, and I can play any song from any time, and it's gonna be the people who played it at the time. You're gonna hear them again coming out of speakers. They would be like sorcery, like so. I don't know, just perspective. I think that's what's interesting about this from my like if you're looking at Jesse, me, and Mathis as a scale, I think that's where I kind of that's why I land kind of in the middle because it becoming explained isn't a failure to me. It doesn't mean it's anything. That's to me the natural evolution of information and us exploring the world around us. Like it's crazy. Like how old are you?
Oh, I'm 32.
32. So I'm 36. So like I remember like when I was like 15, right? So I remember when I was like 15, like marijuana was like extremely dangerous to smoke. Like you get in a lot of trouble if even people knew you had marijuana, and it's like a psychedelic drug kind of, so it kind of like makes you trip out and think about crazy things, and it felt kind of like exciting to try it because you were like expanding your mind, man, like the Beatles, right? Like, whoa, right? And then now you fast forward only like what, 20 years or so from when I was first trying it as like a little kid and like not a little kid, but like a teenager. And like we're 20 years later and now like you can go buy it. There's like stores where you can just buy it. Everybody just hangs out and has it like at their house. It's totally normalized in California where I live. Like people just walk around. It's totally chill. And it's no longer this activity that feels like pondering your orb as a wizard and looking into the infinite. It's now just like I'm gonna like smoke some weed and then like eat a really big hot dog, and like
Vibe out for a bit.
yeah. So stuff has changed, right? So we have to be ready for it to be underwhelming. We have to be ready for that process to occur and understand that the amazing thing, the thing that gets us excited about this stuff in the first place, is the notion that it could be anything now and how exciting all the explanations are. But they're not, it's not the same thing as finding it out. And probably, like my mom, for example, worked at Northrop Grumman for a really long time. She was a defense contractor. She used to like buy parts for things, and she used to be on all these projects when we were young, like through my siblings' childhoods. She was on a top secret military project the whole time. She was like her main job was working on a project that was completely top secret. She couldn't tell any of us about what it was or anything. And it turned out later that it was a plane that she was on that was like a contract that they'd been working on for years and years and years to like win a military contract, and then they lost. And so like, you know, it's over. And they had to like just be like, oh well, I guess that plane isn't going to get made. But she retired and she was like checking to see what they had done in the meantime, and like a lot of it is like drones. There's like a giant drone that they have that has like 140-foot wingspan. That's like a surveillance drone that looks like a Tic Tac. That's like white and it flies through the air silently. So like I feel like eventually we're going to find out that a lot of the UFOs that we're seeing today are secret military vehicles, for example. And I think that's going to be something that's going to cause a lot of people to double down on the idea that they're not military vehicles, that they actually are aliens or whatever the heck that they think they are. But we have to be careful when things like that happen, because the reason that we are saying that we are interested in this stuff is because we want to know the truth. You know what I mean? I want to know the truth about Bigfoot, right? Like, it's cool, the notion that Bigfoot's out there. I like the idea of Bigfoot being out there in the woods. It makes me excited to consume fiction about it, right? Like, I loved the freaking Red Dead Redemption Bigfoot missions. I love all that kind of stuff. I love movies about Sasquatch. I love like I love those messing with Sasquatch commercials. I love the notion that there's an ape man in the woods. But like, if it is explained eventually that almost every Bigfoot sighting that we've ever seen is just a bear standing up on its hind legs, right? Like, even though that's a really disappointing outcome, right? Like, are we ever going to be willing, as the people who are interested in truth, to accept something that's really likely? You know?
Yeah, you gotta be careful with confirmation bias out there.
Yeah.
I do
And it's
think a
more
lot
than
of
it's
things
yeah, it's
overlap and connect, but you gotta be careful going down the rabbit holes. And
people start to identify as I'm a Bigfoot truther or I'm a alien truther. And when your
I'm a
truth
flat earther.
yeah, when your truth eliminates your identity, right? When you're like, I exist to get to the bottom of Bigfoot, and then you do, and it's just like, oh, it's bears. Like, they look really weird when they stand up. Like, people would be surprised how much bears look like Bigfoot when they stand up, right? Like, if that was it, right? And I'm not saying I think that. I'm just saying, like, that's what like park rangers say, for example. Like, park rangers say almost 100% sure that they think it's bears, right? They think it's just bears standing on their hind legs. And like, if there was some way to prove to a Bigfoot believer that that was true, that that was just a mistake, that people were just seeing the bear, would the Bigfoot truther, is there a way to like remain an honest Bigfoot truther and say, yeah, but it's still like, it could be Bigfoot. Like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, I think that's the thing that we should be sort of like contextualizing it around. I think we should
Yeah,
be contextualizing it around like, what actually is it, you know? And that being the main thing. And it's fun to be like, there could be dogmen out there. And I don't think it's impossible that there are. Like I say, like, there's weird footage. I've seen some crazy ghost shit. Somebody brought me at a show one time, showed me like some live photo from an iPhone of a ghost like moving, sitting in a chair. I have no idea how they. I have no idea what that was. I have no idea how to explain it. To me, it was somebody showing me a picture of a real fucking ghost. So to me, definitely, there's stuff out there that's impossible to explain for sure. But I think a lot of the time we should almost be looking for the worst, most boring explanation. I think that's the only way that we're ever going to really pave the way for some mind blowing shit when it happens. Like if nothing exists, if Bigfoot doesn't exist, if aliens don't exist, if ghosts don't exist, if vampires don't exist, if werewolves don't exist, but there is a mushroom that can like if you eat it, you like connect psychically with every human being on the planet, and you can all hang out there like a server. Like if that existed out of nowhere and that was just the one weird thing that was true about Earth, it would change everything no matter what anyway. So we don't need to worry about which ones are true or which ones are false. We just need to study them as phenomena. That's why, you know, it's always the X-Files. It's always just a list of weird things. It's never like, yeah, this one's true, this one's false, this one's true, this one's false. It's literally just we have to pay attention to all this weird shit because eventually some of it's going to be real. But we don't want to get too attached to any one thing. We want to take it like drugs. We want to take Bigfoot like drugs. We want to take the notion of Bigfoot and ride it out and see where it takes us and get high off Bigfoot and be like, so I took the Bigfoot pills, aka I went out into the fucking woods with my buddy and my phone, and I sat there in the woods in the quiet and played my Bigfoot horn or whatever, or like Bigfoot call, or I don't know how you do it. I'm just ignorant about that, but like do it the best that you possibly can to create the possible, the best possible environment for this thing to show up and like do it. That is the success. The success is that you took the time to give it a fair shot and find out what you found out, right? It's not about what you find out, whether it's true or false. It's about having the balls to go out there and say, let's find out about fucking Bigfoot. Let's fucking find out. Let's see if there's Bigfoot. That's what's cool about it to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people they live their lives as if they know everything or everything's already been figured out. And I feel like if most of these things don't exist, then we just live in one boring world of
Yeah.
survival.
Yeah, and that's like part of why people like I mean you can talk about zealotry, right? You can talk about that just as a concept, right? It's the same reason like MAGA exists today. Is like people like to get comfortable with their way of life. That's like probably everybody's main goal. Like, if you're a peasant back in the day in some country from 500 years ago, and you work for someone and whatever, and you have a good farm and you produce good crops and whatever, and you eat your food, your world, because that is your world, you can like dominate your world. You know what I mean? Like, if imagine, like, are you a gamer at all?
A little bit, not like super into it. I game when I can.
Well, like Pokemon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like we played that all as kids, right? Like that was like really popular in the 90s, like, and still popular today, but like point is like when we were kids, we could even like beat that game and get to the point where we could like run that game. Like anybody, I will be better than there's not a person in this existence that is better than me at the game. I am the god of this world. I can destroy Lance, the champion. I can destroy anyone, my best friend, Professor Oak, anyone. I can kill Mewtwo. Mewtwo, I own that guy, right? Like we can like own our existence within the world of Pokemon. And when you're somebody like a peasant back in the day and you have only like four things that you need to think about, it's like playing Sims 1 versus playing Sims 4, right? It's like easier just because there's less to think about. So today, some people are educated culturally by their life experience. Some people are lucky enough to go travel the world. Some people are unfortunate enough to have to live as second class citizens in society and get a look at how, society treats people that it doesn't care about. There's always something that's going to like
No.
blow somebody's mind. There's always going to be something that blows somebody's mind, but like there is a sect of people where suddenly the Pokemon game becomes too complicated. The Pokemon, there's
Hey,
1,000,
shush. I have my
you
dog
know,
behind me.
no, I know, trust me, I know. There's like 1,000 Pokemon now instead of 150, right? That's too
Yeah.
many to think about. There's all these extra moves and stuff you have to think about now. I don't know. And then suddenly you're like, Pokemon sucks. Like, fuck that. It's all about getting back to basics. I like to play old games. That's what's really important. Like, I need like something simple and
No.
straightforward. And people lost their way when they started to get all complicated and try and make more interesting games. So, like, that's how conservatism starts. That's how, like, holding on to your beliefs starts. The more your way of life is challenged, right? The more your understanding of the world starts to become outdated, right? The more
Hmm.
your understanding of the world starts to become outdated, the scarier it can become to let go.
Hey, come on.
The scarier it can become to let go and jump into a new shape, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why stuff like Bigfoot, stuff like aliens, stuff like ghosts, that's so hard to move the ball forward in terms of our understanding of what those things are. Like, people don't want to let go of flying saucers because that's what they grew up studying, was flying saucers. They think about flying saucers as what aliens are. They're not ready to like go all in on interdimensional being theory or whatever the like newest like popular understanding of what UFOs are. So like
Hey,
that becomes like a rift
yeah. Give me one
culturally.
second.
Basically what I'm just saying is like stuff as you study it, like when you're a scientist, when you're really somebody who's trying to deepen our understanding of something, like a normal scientist studying the forest floor or whatever scientists
Mhm.
study, I don't know, physics, whatever. Like the goalposts are constantly shifting. The goalposts are constantly changing. Our understanding of physics as a whole is constantly changing. Quantum physics is like redefining our understanding of literally every aspect of reality in this age of science, right? But if we ever want, stuff like ufology or Bigfoot hunting or ghost hunting or psychic powers or anything like that, magic, anything like that, to take hold, we have to be ready to let go of our preconceptions as free thinkers, as open minded, third eye open people who are looking at the world with our, open minds. We have to actually make sure we have an open mind, even if it's against what we want it to be. Like, it would be very vindicating for you, I imagine, right? Like you were saying, your family and stuff, like, or like people around you, your friends, like kind of sometimes tease you about your beliefs, right? You're like, oh, like, come on, man, like Bigfoot, really, or whatever, right? So, like, obviously, for you living through that type of bullshit from people, right? You have an added motive in your mind, like, but if it was real, I could just fucking like
Biggest I told
imagine,
you so.
yeah, biggest I told you so ever, right? So, like, that type of feeling is really hard to combat when you're like constantly the joke person. When you're constantly the ridiculous one, that type of feeling is really hard not to give into because it's very frustrating. Like on our show, right? It's Mathis who is obsessed with aliens and he's constantly let down by what's happening, the disclosure, the constant dick wetting, and then, sandpapering of the dick over and over again with us, talking about learning about aliens, what's happening in the future, all that type of stuff. And we have to roll with those punches rather than be disappointed with the outcomes. We have to live in a world to believe in this shit and to ever move the buck forward. We have to live in a world where maybe it doesn't exist too. Have to.
Yeah, I think that's the sad reality with some of this that advancements won't be made until like the old guard kind of lets go of power. And we can actually start, investigating things on the new eyeballs and new lights. It's the people who don't want to let go to their life works and whatnot. They shut all that down.
Yeah, for sure.
But you said a few things too, because I had UFOs on my list about the living UFOs. There was, I think it was the cryptids of the corn that said, what if some of them could be like floating fungus, and so people are like tripping out and seeing aliens, but it's just like this big, blob of flying fungus. That was an interesting thing. They brought
Yeah.
up like the Bonnie Hill one, how they had two different experiences and like a bag of fertilizer like disappeared, and they thought it was really weird. And it's not the only time cases like that where like fertilizer like hot dogs, something that has like a lot of I forget the word, a lot of nutrients that they would want, they go missing.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, the idea of them being some kind of life form is really interesting
But
in general.
they were saying not all, just like some
Right.
sets.
Right. Like I was talking about this because there was a paper out about them being plasmids or something like that. There was like a research paper that went out like a couple months back, and the notion was that there are these sort of like plasmid life forms that exist in the atmosphere, and they have this ability to like organize and communicate with each other and mimic shapes and do things like that. And it's interesting, right? But it's also scary because it's like part of it is like maybe the reason that they're showing up now isn't like the narrative that people love to say about aliens, where it's like, oh my god, they know we're gonna blow ourselves up, so at the last second they're gonna show up and like put a finger in the dam and tell everybody be quiet and hug or whatever. Like what the explanation for these, why are there these new life forms now that we're seeing, is like the balance of the earth is like so out of whack that these life forms are like exploding into our parts of the world where we live, and they're being chased out of their homes or whatever, and it's just another sign of you know entire elements of our planet that we don't know about appearing now to die with along with us. So we really just need to take care of the planet and be ready for anything, and listen to people who fucking practice scientific method. Listen to people and live in the world that's actually there instead of the one that we want to live in,
Yeah,
that we wish we could live in.
they brought up the. Have you heard of the fungus Bob?
Bob,
Yeah, Bob the fungus.
Bob.
Yeah,
This guy's name is Bob, and he's a fungus.
yeah, he's like the biggest organism like on the planet. Like he
Oh
stretches
yes, he's like
like
a huge.
acreage.
Yes, yes, with the mycelium and all the
Yeah, like
like.
he has a
It's
whole
like a yeah.
forest on its back.
Yes, 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 yes. I do know what
Yeah,
you're
like
talking about.
there's a lot about mushrooms we don't understand that that's an organism we very. But I thought it was funny they brought up again about like the probing. What if they're just literally taking the poop out of you as a food source? As that for them to like go back up, they have to be super light, so they couldn't really eat matter that way. They would need something that's super dense with nutrients, so they can
So
go
they're
back up.
just they're just milking us for our shit.
Yeah, some people bring up too some of the recurring abductions. Maybe they're using us as a host, so that could be part of like the implanting still.
That's true. I mean, like, how do I describe this? Like, I used to write for this show called Game Theory, and they do this stuff where they like take
I
real.
wasn't sure if it was you or Jesse that had said that they work for the game theory.
Oh yeah, I used to write for the show Game Theory, and the point of Game Theory is that they kind of like take things from games and like apply real world facts and science to them and see how it works, right? And so I did one on the Toads from Mario, the like guys with the big hats, and talking about how is it possible that the Toads are being mind controlled by fungus that's on their bodies, and maybe the Mushroom Kingdom really is like actually mushrooms running things, and the people are just like drones or something like that. And I started looking into what mushrooms really can do, and mushrooms all over the planet, not just Bob, but mushrooms in general all over the planet are basically on a mushroom internet together with each other, all with things that travel under the ground. So they can like connect interspecies. Even plants can get in on the networks and communicate with other plants without even talking to the mushrooms. They just all swap data on these like biological internet lines, first of all, which is like, to me, like a Miyazaki movie, like some fucking crazy bullshit, Final Fantasy shit, Gaia energy shit. But then also, they can do things like, hey, we as a group are all deciding that this new invasive form of plant is kind of like fucking things up in this area of the forest. So we're going to go ahead and choke it out with poison. So we're going to go ahead and send poison to its roots and kill it and choke it out. And all the plants of the forest work together, almost like a democracy, to like wipe out the plants they don't like. So have you ever seen the movie The Happening?
No, I don't think I've actually seen it. I've seen a lot of video breakdowns about it, but no, I don't think I've actually seen it. But I know of it.
Do you know the spoiler at the end, the plot?
Just that wasn't the plants releasing like the chemicals or the
It was
spores
like,
that
yeah,
make the people do it.
the notion was that Mother Nature had had enough, and she was fighting back against the infection that was killing the planet, and it's us, right? So like maybe that's what it is too. Maybe like the fungus are working together to try and turn off our nukes, for example. You know,
I actually I was gonna bring that up because that's what they had said that fungus they eat almost anything, especially nuclear waste. So again, if you're seeing this big blobular thing looking for a food source easy to take, maybe it could sense the nuclear radiation, but it just couldn't get to it.
that's what Godzilla did in the most recent American Godzilla films. Just went straight to the nuclear bombs and started eating them or whatever. You
I
know,
want to say Chernobyl has was it the black mushrooms eating some of the radiation over there?
that's like part of their like reclamation strategy, right? They like found these mushrooms that could like stable, like neutralize radiation. Is that right?
Yeah, in a sense, it's eating it and making everything livable again.
That's miraculous. It's like the plastic eating bacteria. That
Yeah, a
thing.
lot of people quote Jurassic Park, but life will find a way.
I hope so. I mean, look, it's not looking so good for old planet Earth at this time. So, I would love some good news in the form of a scientific breakthrough, even if it comes from an alien.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Gravity Falls?
I saw the first season.
Okay. Well, I think in the second season they have this thing called the Infinity Die, like Dungeons and Dragons. I feel like if you mix that kind of like a Tesseract, I think that's kind of like all reality in a way. Like everything's connected. It collapses and it's this weird shape. Um, so I think some of what we do see could be things out of time. And one thing I heard coming, uh, you know, uh, combining the mushrooms with the UFOs is that they're looking into making microchips out of fungus because it'd be
Hmm.
like almost instantaneous, data transfer. So I think if we're going down that timeline, maybe some of the living UFOs could be a mix of fungus and technology that we created
Yeah,
coming
it could,
back.
but that's really what it is. It's like literally it could be anything, but we don't know.
Hmm.
Like it's interesting that it's appearing all over the earth. It's interesting that it seems to be also like New Jersey owns it somehow. Also, I don't know. Trump came out and said it was sanctioned by the FAA, which means nothing. I don't know what it was. It's just it's just fascinating stuff, and it feels more and more like what I was saying earlier. It's like I'm not here to say what I think it is because I have no idea what it is. I can tell
Yeah.
you what I've been reading online, but what I will say is that it does certainly seem like something is occurring. It does certainly seem like there's something out there that people are paying attention to that we don't know what it is. And even if that thing is just a crazy new jet, that would be nice to know.
So yeah, some of it could just be technology we don't know. Some of it could be other countries. Some of it could be, you know, what was it, interdimensional time travel stuff. Things that were here before us, possibly.
Hmm.
And then, do you believe any of the other stories of like sky creatures? Like they think, I forget what it is, but like those big colonies of um single-celled organisms, like in the oceans. Some people say that maybe they could be up there too. Um,
Also, again, like very, very possible. Like these are all things that like we now are starting to have technology to kind of easily look at more. And is it likely that it's like a big part of our planet that we just totally missed? I don't know. I don't really know the like specifics of how much we know about that stuff. Like I don't know what evidence there is, like other than that people are saying I'm aware of the notion of it, and I know that I've read articles with those types of things in them, but I've never read like the paper on it, so I don't know the specifics. But I will say the plasmids thing is very interesting, and it's an energy based life form. And obviously, again, it's not something that's been proven, but it's something that got a peer reviewed paper published. Which which doesn't mean nothing. That's like that's kind of interesting that we're at the point where that type of hypothesis can be floated that far up the flagpole and published. That it's like sentient energy. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, definitely crazy, crazy thought.
And it would make sense too, like people not wanting like Americans not wanting other countries to find out about it because you could, even if it's not alien technology, you can reverse engineer something like that because you've never seen it. Because those things, these plasmids, they're saying those things have, because they're energy, they have the ability to move like how we see things move impossibly, you know? And so there's some sort of propulsion technology or something there to be reverse engineered, even if it is from this Earth.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who dive into your cult. They say once you figure out the secrets of magnetism, you'll understand everything.
Yeah. And, I remember online a year or two ago, there was like a Chinese scientist who was doing some sort of research into mag propulsion or gravity magnetism propulsion, and she like disappeared. She like went back to China and vanished, and nobody knows where she's at. So like, there's all kinds of ways it could go, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. I'm looking for specific evidence if I'm gonna like subscribe to a theory, but otherwise, I love to consume the culture like it's comic books and learn all the lore and learn all the context for everything
Yeah,
because
because
it helps me
there's always
respect.
like a thread of truth behind it all.
It helps me learn to respect people. Like when I know more about the subject and the science behind it, I can hear people's theories and go, okay, this guy's full of shit. Okay, this guy's saying something that's intriguing to me because as somebody who knows about this now, that still holds water for me. Like I think that's what's important about it is just to stay as informed as possible about stuff that you're passionate about.
Yeah. I'm kind of like that in a way with like the people who bring up stories similar to like the 22 Unback. Like I want to believe, but at the same time, a lot of it just sounds too out there to really believe that it's happening. Have you heard about that? Like people being abducted, going to fight for like 20 years, and then being sent back the night they were abducted and living normal lives from then on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've heard about that type of stuff, but it's like it's so it's so specific. I'd love to find like a way to make it verifiable. I'd love to be able to like start somewhere with a nail in it and then work outward, Because there's all these documents out there that look to be classified documents that look to be leaked memos or whatever. But I need one of the main ones. I need like a big famous one to be like the government be like, yeah, that one's 100% real and here's what this means and here's what this means. If we just had one of those, we could like reverse engineer for another decade, right? So I'm hoping that in this whole shit show of shit that Trump is trying to do right now, that he does some like disclosure type stuff. I'd love for him to talk about. I'd love for him to let out more Kennedy stuff. I don't know what's going on with that. I heard about that he authorized some Kennedy stuff, but just more information. Even if it makes it boring, I want it. That's all. That's my final line on anything like unproven like that. It's hard to go deep into what I believe because it's just me doing like create a character.
Yeah, I think that comes back to sometimes people just don't want to accept a simple answer. It has to be this whole big elaborate conspiracy. Like,
Yeah, because that's why they got into it in the first place is because the normal world was too boring.
boring.
They
Yeah.
wanted something more interesting. What a more interesting explanation.
Yeah. C coming back to the sky creatures, they say like the atmosphere is, what, like 500 times bigger than the ocean. So there's a lot of space that up there we haven't really even studied
That's true.
comparatively. But yeah, I had a couple of conspiracies on here, but a lot of them connect to each other, and we kind of touch upon it, like MK Ultra, the Philadelphia, Montauk. I think there could be some truth to it, but a lot of it, misinformation and just Hollywood exaggerations kind of muddy the water on everything.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff, like, it's kind of tainted by, I think on purpose, the government likes to spread misinformation among the real information because it really is the best way to do it because you don't have to then tamp down on everything. Like, there's no way to be 100% sure that everything is not getting out, right? So rather than ever think about policing it or trying to legitimize anybody who has all kinds of weird stuff, you just put out slightly fake stuff or add slightly fake information to real information when it comes out there just to fuck with everybody so that that way you can't really believe anyone. It's the same reason,
Mhm.
it's still hard to talk about Bigfoot is because Bigfoot as a notion is like funny. It's like a comedy idea. Bigfoot is like most people see him, and I think it's funny. You know what I mean? And that's what you have to fight against every time that you just want to even simply talk seriously about Bigfoot as a topic, right? It's frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, dang it. I have ADD, so sometimes thoughts come in and out. I had one about the disinformation that, yeah, it's just an easy kind of cop out and misdirection. Be like, oh, you believe that? Like, we know that's fake. What's the dude that spent years debunking it and then flipped and said, no, actually, aliens are real? Like, how do you trust something like that going forward?
Right. It's like, and then among that is like probably actually like five or six guys that is being paid by the government to like go out there and be like, big one this time, big one this time. And then you get like another orb picture and
Hmm.
everybody's like, what does that even mean, bro? And it just makes everybody kind of like jump at shadows and make up stuff and hallucinate a little bit. So, that's kind of just how it goes. It's like foolproof.
Yeah, minimal effort, you can just be like, nah, that's not real. And it's an easy cover up. Oh, I think we're coming up on a little bit over an hour. Do you have any final thoughts, final questions? We can start wrapping
Um,
up.
yeah, I think I just want to say like, you know, I feel like we talked a lot about theories of what things could be that are out there that like we like to imagine about the
Hmm.
things that get us excited about these topics and get us coming to places like my podcast, the ideas that unify us, things like Bigfoot, things like ghosts, aliens, all that type of stuff. And I think I just want to say like to be an Alex, to be an Alex person, if you're going to be a Jesse, a Mathis, or an Alex, to be an Alex is not just to like be high and make jokes, right? It's to take the cultural as cultural, take the science as science, and be ready to be disappointed. And that's why it's fun to smoke weed. Like it's not the weed that's creating this situation. Like we just need to hang out and be ready for anything and not think about whether things are true or false and just study them sometimes. And I think accumulating that information and being serious about the information rather than the conclusions is way big powerful moves. Big flex energy. And please watch my podcast and watch my Super Beard Bro show and also my Star Wars podcast. And thank you,
Yeah.
thank you for watching this.
Well, thank you for coming on. But yeah, that's probably why I started this. I got into it to read a little bit later in life, but I always liked having these conversations and, like I said, listen to them on the podcasts. I feel like a lot of the episodes I have on my is like, oh, well, I heard this one thing, but it gets the ball rolling. Sometimes you can make connections.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, thank you for coming on. Big fan of the podcast. I think I'm a few episodes behind. I need to catch up on, but thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for listening and thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Do you want to shout out any other socials?
I'm at Faciane pretty much everywhere. On Blue Sky, I'm like at Faciane.bluesky.social. That's the newest one. But I'm just normal at Faciane, Facianea on everything, so you can come find me. And I think if you just type that in on Blue Sky, it comes up too. Um, I like Blue Sky a lot so far. It's been pretty good. So come join me on there. It's very legitimate compared to its dark twin. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. This has been the Oddball Odyssey. Thank you guys for listening. Hope enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Hi. Thank you.